Hey, it's the FinTech Newscast. My name's John, and with me, as always, is Steve. How are you doing?
As always, I am great. Enjoying crypto summer. How are you, John?
Crypto summer, right? That seems to be every summer these days,
Yeah.
but very much on the mark because we're lucky enough to have Maja Vujinovic, the CEO of digital assets at FG Nexus. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, guys. And I love how Steve is already in the summer. I like that.
I love it. It's
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
way ahead. I'm just way ahead. I'm way ahead.
I
Did I
wish the
say welcome?
Clarity Act was way ahead,
Mm.
but here we are.
Uh, oh, wow, you're getting into the big news that just came out. And I will say show because you will be entertained with Maya and Steve
Oh
on
yeah.
the episode this time. But yeah, the Clarity Act, which is officially called the, let me read it here, Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which already passed the House last year, has just made it to the Senate Banking Committee. And this is a big deal. And this is where I cut off and go to Maya because she knows way more about this than I think either of us, no matter how much research. But this is a big deal for the crypto markets and market regulation around blockchain. I will kind of hand it over to you. What's your take on the Clarity Act? You know what it's going to do for your industry?
Yeah, I think it's great to be here. First of all, you're right on the news. I think we are, you know, closest that we've ever been to passing this, into a law. I think, unfortunately, the path is a bit narrower than these headlines that you're reading and I'm reading suggest, because the Senate Banking Committee, as you just said, is holding this markup vote this Thursday on the 14th, May 14th. And those full, I think it's about 309 page text that was
Exactly
released this
right.
week. Yeah, I think, yeah, am I right? 309 or something? Yeah, that I
On the
think,
309.
yeah,
money.
Yep.
You're on the
309
money.
page text. Yeah, right. And so that has been delayed since January, and it keeps being pushed and pushed, right? It was pushed from January 15th, then to late April, and now we are finally to this week. So I'm hoping that if this really, I mean, it either passes now, in my opinion, or it really gets dragged into July and August, which means probably doesn't pass or it has a really hard time passing, right? It is very important for our industry for many different reasons. It is a framework that really decides which crypto assets are securities and which end up being commodities. Who regulates them too, right? Is it SEC that regulates them, or is it the CFTC that regulates them? What rules apply to exchanges? What rules apply to brokers? What applies to dealers? So we
Mm.
really needed this clarity for a long time now. I think crypto industry in general and this technology, people have been building this technology, have been asking for clarity just to understand how we can move forward and disrupt the industry. And so I really hope that this does happen, this Thursday. And it is a piece of legislation that institutional capital has been waiting for too, because the moment you have this clarity, you're going to have um, probably most exciting part in crypto happen, which is tokenization. And so, and that's going to happen at a very large scale.
And so that regulatory uncertainty gets cleared up by this. Well, it's called the Clarity Act,
Yeah.
but
It's in the name.
I guess that's the selling point. But you think that's is this bill enough to open the floodgates?
Yeah. So we've had stablecoin in a Genius Act, right? And I think
Passed last
this,
year.
that's right. That's right. And so um, in this particular bill, right, the Senate version, uh, you know, of the House Clarity Act, which has passed, I think, in July with kind of the majority, 200 and something 90 votes, 234 votes.
You know,
It
anything
is,
bipartisan, I'm really happy to see.
I know,
It's
I
so
know.
uncommon
And
over there. Yeah.
yeah, so I think we've had that gave us a clarity on stable coins, which, by the way, you wanted a little bit juicy. I think this is really juicy. We kind of
Yeah.
had to pass that. And the reason we had to pass that is because we saw a large de-dollarization in many places, right, in the world. And not only that, we saw a dollar fall by 11% in I don't know how many years, right? That has happened. And so in order for us to push the dollar around the world, we really had to do something. And this technology is a perfect way to do it, right? For us to put the tokenized treasury bills and stable coins backed by USD into the hands of the global users, right? And so I think that we had to do something fast there because it was bipartisan, right? It has suited us all. Now, this year, I think it's a little bit interesting because you've got banks that are still, you know, pulling on the opposite direction, right? And I think what hasn't been
Yes.
clarified in the stablecoin yield. And so that is a clear kind of fight between the legacy systems and the new incumbents, because guess what happens? The moment you allow the stablecoin yield, that means three of us can go and set up a company, right? And have large amounts of assets that will end up paying a yield on our token that we develop, right? We automatically start competing with the large banks and the deposits, right? That is going to pull a lot of people out of banking deposits. So I think this is quite interesting. That fight, most people are kind of saying, this is just purely about legislation and law and how we move forward. No, this is about large banks kind of keeping still their large foothold, which they've had for, many years in this country and globally, right? So they're trying to figure out where they fit in and how they're going to transform their banks with this technology, and then how large fintechs are going to do. Because think about Stripe and Facebook and all of them, right? That have billions of users of some of them that can suddenly launch these stable coins and pull the depositors away from the banks. So that's a bit of a contention there.
So is there an upper limit on the
I
yield?
told you, Steve, she was the right guest
She is
for this
definitely
show.
the guest for this. So is there an upper limit on the yield? Is that what this app created? Is an upper limit or a floor so that you have to offer a certain amount of yield?
I think in my opinion, if I was on the bank side, I would probably say you have a limit, right?
A limit.
Because
Okay.
right now, right, what do banks offer? Pretty much nothing. Given the
Nothing.
inflation, where what was announced today, I think we're on double than what we expected to be. So,
Mhm.
if I was a bank, I would probably say, look, we've either figure out our own stable coin to give something back so we're competing, right? Or we're gonna have to fight for this legislation to say that we have a ceiling of some sorts.
Mm.
Yeah, the banking lobbyists have been pushing to limit the amount of stablecoin rewards that the
Yeah.
bill will allow. But
Yes,
good
and
thing, fortunately, the U.S. doesn't have much money in politics, so
No, not at all.
yeah,
they'll just do the right
I
thing.
think what you just mentioned, which is another thing that is a bit sticky to talk about, that political fight that really no one is mentioning. The conflict of interest provision is not in the banking version of the bill because it sits outside of the banking's jurisdiction. The provision is one designed actually to limit the government officials, including the
Mhm.
president, that are profiting from the crypto industry. So the Democrats, that are led by Senator Gillibrand, have said they will not vote for a final bill without that provision, which is another thing that most people are not talking about. And the White House has, said it will not accept a bill that targets the president's crypto businesses. So
Oh.
somebody has to fold. And right now it's not clear who will fold in this bill. So I think that's something that has to be double clicked on, just not on this podcast though.
Yeah, yeah. Like you mentioned, the congressional schedule is very tight. There's very limited working days until the midterms take over,
That's
and
right.
if Trump won't yield on what you were just saying about the conflict of interest provision, and the Democrats control Congress, then there might not be any bill till at least 2030
Yeah. So
when
every
we can
month,
get some alignment.
yeah. So every month, basically, what you're saying is past the midsummer raises that chance that
Mm.
this bill dies on a midterm calendar. Absolutely. And once,
Right,
members go home in August to campaign, crypto
it's
becomes a
done.
political liability, right? For Democrats in these swing seats, right? And so, and I think I can't remember, but I think the recent polls have also shown that 40% of the Americans trust traditional banks more than the crypto platforms, while only 17% rate them equally. So that's not pulling for crypto, right? So I would say base case is that this banking passes Thursday, likely on a near party line vote, and then agriculture marks it up in June, and then conflict of interest fight that I talked about stalls momentum through July. And I don't know about that compromise, right? And maybe we reach some kind of a compromise in September. I don't know, but I think that's you're absolutely right. I think we're looking at a long term after if this doesn't pass.
We'll have you back in 2030 to discuss the
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
Clarity
Please no,
Act.
please no. We can't move forward. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
this is all very much related to your efforts
Yes.
around tokenization of assets and provides that regulatory clarity. How much are you limited, and how much will you be able to move forward with
Yeah.
tokenization, with or without this?
Yeah. We are completely limited on tokenization, but we are not limited on our moat. Our moat is really significant. I think the single biggest story for me, John and Steve, it's unfortunate from one angle, right? If I say to you that affordable housing is a crisis in this country, it's only growing. We are lucky to have this opportunity at the moment to kind of reposition our company. And I think the single biggest story in Wall Street right now is the race to put real world assets on chain. Okay. And I think um, we saw an opportunity where we could potentially do that. And that's what we put out in our press releases. And I think it's very interesting to me. It's been a pattern in my career and in my history of building things. um, I've always been early, and sometimes being early is, you don't really always benefit the most, but
Yeah.
I've always been early in trends, be it in mobile payments that I saw early in Africa in early 2000s and that innovation being brought to the US, right? That's why we have mobile payments now and we have
Yeah,
mobile money.
definitely.
Um, Bitcoin in 2010, right? Seeing CRISPR in really early in 2016, 2015, or whatever it was, space exploration and things like that. And then stable coins really, really early because I bought the first bank for Tether. And now I saw tokenization as a potential really early, but where I couldn't get on board with, Securitize and T0 and similar platforms early days, even though I was an advisor to one of them. I couldn't see that coming right there and then when they thought it was coming because I had the experience of working in a large firm and being a lawyer and working at SEC. I knew that this was going to take a long time. But right now, what I'm seeing also is that most people can't connect those dots. Is that, when we talked about affordable housing crisis and how much we're having demand for that, and we talked about doing something on chain, at first I would get people tilting their heads, like, what? Really? Like, you know,
Yeah.
don't you just want to tokenize housing and that's it? And reality is that that's a massively growing asset class. It's unfortunate as well that it's growing because we can't find other solutions, but it is growing and somebody needs to do it. And we are lucky that part of some of our founders have been in the space for a while. And nobody has been connecting those. Now, slowly, that I'm going in front of folks and speaking about, what the tokenized real world assets can actually potentially do even for DeFi, right? Because if you look at DeFi has just been kind of running with 10 people all together, lending to each other and looping and staking and, leveraging and doing all kinds of things. But really, we haven't had a mass real world assets on chain to enter the DeFi, right? Yet. And so that's kind of exactly what we're preparing for.
Yeah, Steve and I are constantly complaining about how long this is going to take,
Yeah.
or it's taking. I remember reading the paper, the Ethereum Foundation paper, and the projects, and so excited about these things happening. I didn't see all the obstacles and how
Yeah.
long this would take
Yeah.
to do. And interesting and exciting to see that you're working on that. We should backtrack and say that you are working on tokenization for attracting capital to be used for affordable finance.
Yes, affordable housing, affordable housing. Yeah. Yeah.
Housing, yes.
And one thing that you meant, you're absolutely right. If you look at what's been tokenized, right? So you look at almost 25 to 27 billion dollars in tokenized treasuries and tokenized private credit. We have
Mm.
that. And those are useful products, but they're financial wrappers. They are paper on top of paper.
It's
So
not a solution.
BlackRock's the fund that they did, the build, holds about, I think, 2.7 to 2.8 billion dollars of tokenized treasuries. Frankel Templeton Benji fund pays around 4 to 5% on those. And these are yield products, right? That they exist. That's fine. But they're not tokenizing the real economy. They're tokenizing the same financial instrument that already trades on Wall Street, just on a blockchain. Is it faster? Is it more efficient? Is that what's coming? 100%. Is it taking a lot longer than what people have expected? Yes. And I've said that in 2015, that will take about 10 to 15 years for this to take hold. 99.9% of people did not believe me, except probably the ones that were maybe in technology in the large banks that saw that bureaucracy and figuring out the politics around it, right? Who will
No.
own the rails? How do you redefine this new financial system that owns the rails and takes the cut of every transaction, right? Who is going to do that? And so I think that all takes time to do. So what hasn't happened, you're right, it hasn't happened at scale, is the tokenizing product real world asset like housing, like real rent, real cash flow, insurance, right? Real things that people use daily. I think that's the next frontier.
And it's going to take some time to reorganize the processes and organizations around this. I mean, I'm thinking of how people have to reorganize their businesses and all their processes to take advantage of AI, which I've been kind of looking at. How is it disruptive? What do you have to do to take advantage of it? And you can't have the same processes as before
Yeah,
and use that. You can't
that's
have
right.
like a monthly reconciliation, paycheck every 2 weeks,
Mm.
all these cycles
That's
and
right.
systems built around those cycles. You have to kind of change the way you think about how that works and access to daily pay and things that the new systems, new solutions can
Yep.
provide. How does that apply to this affordable housing solution? How is that a different thinking, different process than people providing that right now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you touch on something, I think, first, that's really, really important. What you said is not just disrupting this. I have a friend, for example, who's building a really cool platform where, yeah, you're getting paid immediately after your work. You don't have to wait 2 weeks, 3 months, right? Month or whatever the structure is of the company. It's like
It's
Venmo for
cycle
paychecks.
based.
Yeah, it's Venmo for paychecks, essentially, right?
Mm.
And so, I think all of these things, what you just mentioned, will be nudged with this technology because there is peer to peer and the capabilities there, right? And the younger generation is going to ask, they have no patience. And with AI, by the way, now that I
Those
have my,
kids.
AI agents that I have running, right? Those things are not going to have patience, right? I even said in 2016 that if crypto is not 2016, I looked at what we built at GE when I was building devices on the edge and like IoT stuff. And I said, if humans don't use crypto, AI will certainly use crypto because the speed of that they need is very different than what we do today. So how does it relate directly to housing? I would say a couple of things. Why housing right now is an interesting asset to bring on chain. Manufactured housing communities have a national occupancy rate around 95%, 95%. That's near historic highs. In the Pacific region, occupancy is 99%.
Wow.
And so asking rents have grew from about 6 to 8% year over year to about $752 a month. And only 38% of American households can actually afford the traditional home today. That's, to me, insane. My family moved here from another country, right, to live that American dream. And that, I mean, I just said 38% of Americans can afford a traditional home today. That's
What
down
the heck?
from 57% 5 years ago.
It's crazy. So what?
That's
I'm curious. How would tokenizing housing alleviate the cost pressure of this?
so it's not, it doesn't alleviate first of all, we gotta distinguish what we're saying right now. First step, remember, John was right. The Without Clarity Act, we
Thank you,
can't
Maya.
do. We, uh-oh. Now you're gonna hold this one against me, Steve. But okay, so he was right. The lack of Clarity Act really doesn't allow us to move with tokenization as fast as we could. We could do it, at BVI or something like that, offshore, right? And we could potentially look for something like that. Not yet. There are companies that are exploring that at the moment. What we're looking for is really potentially showcasing the profitability, the insane growth that I just mentioned of this asset class,
Um,
that we will be looking at using on-chain capabilities to raise more capital to go buy more and really hedge our bets. Okay. And so that's on one side. And then later looking at potentially tokenizing, and we'll see how that goes once the Clarity Act passes and what we're going to do exactly there. But look at it this way. The supply side of that side is broken as well, Steve. So to answer your question, in the way that helps existing communities. So municipalities currently will not zone new manufacturing housing. Full stop. I
yeah.
think that's a problem in this country. Talk about politics, that's a huge problem. We don't, and talk about our race with China. We can't just decide tomorrow, if you and I wanted to build, some kind of a manufacturing plant, that we are going to decide to build housing right next to it, right? Because there is all sorts of issues with that. Therefore, we can move fast with building certain things that, let's say, China can when it comes to AI. Local opposition, the outdated rules have essentially basically frozen new development. That
Sure.
is bad for renters, it's bad for buyers, but it means that existing communities have durable pricing power.
Yeah.
So cap rates are running at 5.9 to 6 something percent, materially better than what you can get on tokenized treasuries today.
Uh,
And that's also, on top of that, that's backed by real occupying housing rather than a government paper. So I think for an investor looking at this, and particularly I look at investors because think of last 6 months. I'm pretty sure both of you have heard same things I have. Where do you actually put your money? Dollar is coming down. Market is all over the place, right? There's only like 5 stocks that are going up. The
yeah.
war is happening. Inflation is high. Like, what do you actually invest in? I think most people are looking, and everybody's saying, oh, well, housing, regular housing, single family homes are just going to have this massive bubble, right? Or large corporates are buying it. So I think this becomes a really interesting opportunity for a lot of people out there looking to hedge a lot of things that they want to hedge against, right? So I think it's just a really interesting moat that we have, and it's backed by a real growing demand and a real cash flow business.
How
Interesting.
much do you have to re-explain these days about how, blockchain is not Silk Road and things like that? Are people pretty much on board when you talk to other financials, other investors, that kind of thing, or are you still going back and explaining, "Lo, this is a solution to this problem"?
Yeah. So to distinguish a couple of things, um, Silk Road, they'll
This is going
probably.
back a ways, but
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
but
fear
yeah,
about it.
but you're right. You're right. But that's kind of more Bitcoin bucket, right? So people will
Yeah,
say
it
that
gets
this is
conflated a bit,
absolutely, because most people will just say, "Oh, Bitcoin is blockchain." What? You know? So it's
right?
Bitcoin does have a blockchain, but then there's blockchains, right?
Mhm.
These are technologies. And so I hope that we get to a place where we don't have to talk about these technologies, because right now when you're using Wells Fargo or Zelle or Venmo or Uber, you don't really talk about what that technology is in a back end. You're just using
Yeah.
it. When we're using this Riverside, we don't talk about some tech that's behind it. We're just using Riverside, right? We're
It just
solving a
works, right?
problem.
It just works.
It
Yeah,
just works. And so I think
I
that's
never use
exactly
a
what.
Linux product.
No,
Yeah.
no. Um, but I think you are right that they are. This is the second time you're right, John. So I don't know, Steve, 2-0
It's
here.
a record.
Gotta get your game going.
Yeah.
But you are right to say that they are. There are folks still that look at this and go, I don't know where to start, which, by the way, this is part of the reason why these dApps have found a little bit of a hype and a home,
Mm.
because most people will never take the time to say, what is Bitcoin? What is Ethereum? What is Solana? What is this? What does it do? Oh, I just have money to invest and I'm never going to stake it myself. I'm never going to do DeFi. I'm never going to take this and maybe leverage it for another real world asset. You know, you just guys need to do that for me. And so there are lots of people out there who are still don't know, but they would like to participate in this. There are a lot of investors out there who don't know anything about healthcare, but they've heard Pfizer and they'll just invest in Pfizer because that's all they've heard about, right? And they don't really know if it's better than Moderna, right? So this is we don't really question that, right? We don't question many ETFs out there. We don't question. We just kind of invest what we think we should be investing in. So you're right. There's still a lot of confusion. And I still have to explain a lot of that. But also you'd be surprised how many people are extremely educated around it and they also just want to participate in this economy.
Well, after this podcast, you won't have to explain anymore. You'll go, I saw it already. I saw the fintech newscast. Speaking of crypto investing and hype, driving around in a Lamborghini from their, Bitcoin investing or something like that. You are based in Miami, where I kind of associate that a little bit. How is it being based in Miami? You've lived and worked a lot of places around the world. How is it in Miami, and why did you choose to live there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've lived. Miami is the 16th place in the world that I live in.
Wow.
It's a phenomenal place. I lived in New York for a very long time. You couldn't get me out of New York. And we talked about, you and I before this, we talked about San Francisco. I love San Francisco because, I was just there a week or 2 weeks ago, whatever. And I told you everywhere I saw a laptop open, it was all on Claude.
Hmm.
But I love Miami. Miami is a booming city. I feel like I'm in college or law school in Miami. Everybody just kind of flocks in to do business and to do work with each other. Um,
Oh, I thought you
and
meant because everybody needs a lawyer to bail them out. So
no, I think
you're
it's
very
nothing.
popular.
I think honestly, this whole crypto and Lambo thing was maybe popular, in DeFi summer, but really it's not anymore. And now the industry has grown up, and you find your tribe, and if you always had
Mhm.
your tribe, you stick with it. Miami is becoming a real hub for a lot of different things. I think it is the density of conversation is very intellectual, and everybody kind of flies into Miami now for a variety of these conferences. FII is there where I speak at frequently. The consensus was just there. Lots of different, right? I mean, JP Morgan conferences, I mean, a lot of things happening. I think G20 is now happening in Miami,
Oh,
actually,
no, that's
in
awesome.
Oh, really?
December. Yeah, which
No.
I just found out yesterday, right?
Oh.
And I think uh,
I'm
it's
well.
also a
Get your
very,
speech ready.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think just it gives me a very interesting perspective. I've lived in Africa, I lived Latin America. I'm originally from the Balkans, right? I grew up in the US and parts of Western Europe. And so I
Mm.
have I think that multicultural experience in Miami is also phenomenal. There's people from all over. There's a lot of people from San Francisco actually that I moved to Miami. So and it works with time zones really well for me, exceptionally well actually. So it's a great place.
Yeah, with New York and Europe, it must be a lot easier. You mentioned your early start in working on solutions in Africa and South America, which we're just kind of hearing is more friendly or more adoption of stablecoin solutions. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it this way: most of those currencies are unstable in those markets, right? And and they have inflation that is absolutely crazy. You can wake up one day and be able to buy, a car, and then the next day, not at all.
Mm.
So
I have those days.
Well, with the inflation going crazy here, I hope that we don't get to that point. But those places just tend to they tend to migrate towards innovation. I mean, it's kind of as they say, innovation is a mother of all necessities, and so this is what happens there. When I told my friends that I read this peer-to-peer paper and that that you can move money across each other in the US, they said, well, why do I need that? I have Visa, right? And so
Yeah.
that's crazy. And really, when you think of stable coins, guys, stable coins fill a gap that in Nigeria, for example, Argentina, Turkey, Kenya, right? I mean, this is how people preserve their local currency. I mean, their local currency loses 30-40% in a year. I mean, this is huge. And for small business owners, that can be a complete killer. And then cross-border transmissions. I mean, I think the stable coins in usage in the last year have grown something like 800%, something crazy, right?
Wow.
That adoption, by the way, if anybody tries to tell you opposite, is not driven by speculation. There's zero speculation there. It
Yeah.
is driven by necessity that is very different demand curve than what you see in the US and the Western market, right? And so, yeah, I see it as a place where you go and you really get inspired of what can change and what could be changed and what could be very different, you know?
So this actually raises an interesting question, which is, you're bringing housing on chain, and I'm curious, are there any other real world or physical assets from that part of the world, right? So you mentioned Africa, the Balkans as well. Are there any other assets that in the US are ripe for bringing on chain?
Yeah, yesterday actually, I had a conversation with the project that was pitching me a tokenized tokenized I can't remember the exact asset, but it was something out of uh Saudi and out of Argentina.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, like this is interesting. Like, who would buy that? First, my response was, oh no, that's too volatile. That's emerging markets. But then I thought to myself, hold on a second. Those emerging markets, actually stocks in the last year or two have done really well.
Much better
If
than
you,
in the US. Yeah.
there you go. So I think, the mental model I use is kind of a real world asset is a good tokenization candidate when three things are true. One, um, it produces a predictable cash flow. You have to have that. I think that's a pillar. That's a most important pillar. Two, the underlying asset itself is hard for normal investors to access today. And three, the existing way of financing, it's slow, it's convoluted, it's expensive, or it's somehow geographically limited, and it's limited right now. A lot of people in emerging markets can't access things here, as you know, and vice versa. So when you apply that filter, a lot of assets light up, right?
Yeah.
Energy infrastructure. This is one I started in Africa in energy and mobile payments. I know this also from my G days, distributed solar projects in sub-Saharan Africa, small hydro plants in Latin America, mini grid, serve the mini grids that are actually serving like maybe, I don't know, 5,000 to 50,000 people. These projects actually produce real cash flow. They are also too small for traditional project finance. They're too big for microfinance, and they sit kind of in these jurisdictions where international capital is really cautious and careful for a variety of good reasons too, right? So tokenization could actually match on-chain capital looking for that yield with the off-grid energy infrastructure. And I think that's really exciting. Telecom infrastructure is another one that comes to mind. Agriculture is something that I've been paying attention to a lot lately because personally I love longevity, and longevity is connected to farming and organic food and what we input in our body.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating for me because I actually think that we are going to run into shortage of water and healthy foods. And I think it's huge and it's underbuilt. For example, a coffee cooperative, right, in Ethiopia, a soybean product in Brazil, a cocoa plant in Ghana. They all have buyers in Europe and US. That's 100% sure, and that will never stop, right?
Um,
And
A
so
steady
I
cash
think
flow.
that's steady cash flow, exactly. So I think it's really fascinating. Royalty streams are really interesting too, music royalties, mining royalties,
Um,
patent royalties, all of that. And so that pattern is really there. I've given those three kind of things where I would kind of look. Yeah.
So how do you, as a business leader, how it seems like there's so much more, there's so many things that could be tokenized to say, and I think your thesis makes sense. But I'm curious, how do you maintain focus on your core product, which is housing, right? If you can think of, energy and infrastructure and soybeans and cacao, etc., is it difficult to kind of stay focused on the one asset that you're keen in on right now?
No, not at all. I mean, we've chosen our asset, right? So, will something maybe change if we decide to change? I don't know, right? Everything is possible, but we have one focus, right? These
Mhm.
are things that I always kind of see in my mind, creative mind can think about, but we have our focus. That's not, there's no really debate around that. We see it as a huge opportunity.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, well, it's tough to get an opinion out of you, Maya, and some perspective. But
Yeah.
I will wrap on one question
Yeah.
we haven't hit on that's very interesting. Any advice you would give to women in tech or fintech or banking based on your experience or mistakes that you see or things that could be better?
So,
I wasn't sure
um,
if you'd have an opinion.
no, no. Um, so I'm going to give you an answer probably people don't expect because most of the advice, has kind of become scripted or,
Lean in, girl.
I don't think that some of the script is, um uh serving anybody. I think first in general doesn't matter who you are. I think stop optimizing for being likable.
Mm.
Um Full stop. I think it's
Steve has done that.
I
I
have,
think
yeah.
I think your competence, execution, beats it every time. And even when you are right, a lot of times they don't admit you're right, but who cares, right? You keep moving and doing better and bigger things, because those that are really type A and that are really successful always want you by their side. Second, the credentials that market cannot argue with, uh, at all. Deal closed, product shipped, seeing around the corner, as I have, and executing on that and working with people who have a same intention, to really make something happen and to just really bring more light into the world, bring more abundance. And third, I would say pick probably, pick rooms where that asymmetry helps you, you know? Um, and 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 I would say a fourth one is, we shouldn't confuse access with power. And I think a lot of women and men make that mistake in proximity to powerful people for being in the conversations are very different things. And when
Mm,
you are in a conversation, when your name comes up, when you're not in the room, you are in a conversation when your name comes up in the room. And, you know, and this happens because you either nudged somebody, you've done something right. And so I think those are interesting, right? And then on mistakes, I would say, loyalty is really important. Loyalty towards people, um, and loyalty towards yourself and what you're trying to do, and that goes a very long way. Even if something doesn't succeed and it's not successful, the project, the group of people, the situation, the deal, if you were really loyal and true to what you're trying to achieve, it goes a long effing way. So I would say that is like the currency, right, of oneself.
I love
great.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for some helpful advice and some great insights. And we can see that you're definitely the epitome of all of this
Yeah.
great advice.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much for
much.
having me on. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's Maja Vujinovic, the CEO of Digital Assets at FG Nexus and all around great person. Thanks so
Thank
much
you
for
so
joining
much,
us.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks. Bye bye.